All right, welcome everybody. So let's get started, and maybe some participants will further join in during this session. My name is Jelle Joustra. I will be hosting today's session, and I'm a manager strategy and innovation at Volatility, but I'm also a volunteer at Net Impact Amsterdam. And for those who don't know yet, Net Impact Amsterdam is an association of professionals who have made the deliberate choice to use their careers and professions as a force for positive change. Well, today, as hopes are high for COP26, we found ourselves in a reality of skyrocketing gas prices, energy prices, talks about energy poverty, and of course, very complex geopolitical situation as well around this. And I think it's a great opportunity now together to have this impact from home session on the implications of these developments right now, but also looking ahead for the energy transition going forward. And we have the privilege to welcome Trisha Paul today, who is an energy analyst at Northpool. And Trisha will give a brief introduction into what is happening in the global energy market, why this is happening, and what this could mean going forward. Now, we like that the session is very interactive, so please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can also post questions in the chat. And if you want, you can unmute yourself and just ask the question throughout the session today. And ask everything you'd like to know or better understand. That's completely the purpose of today. So without further ado, I will hand over to Trisha for her perspective on the current volatility in the energy market and some of its implications.
Thanks a lot, Jelle. And thanks for the introduction. So the way I want to do it is I'll just quickly do a summary of what's been happening or what we've seen over the last month and what I think are the main reasons. Not I think, they're pretty data-based of what the main reasons are for this transition, about the rise for the price hike and what it means on the transition. And then, then after that, Jelle and I are just going to have a conversation, deal with some key questions that we've identified. And like he said, feel free to drop in or interrupt at any point. Okay, so with that said, I'll just get started. Am I sharing the right screen? Do you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right. Oh, sorry, I went a bit too ahead. Okay, so with this graph, I kind of just want to give you an idea of how the price of gas has risen over the last year, actually. So since starting November 20, and the percentage increase in the gas, different types of gases. So over here, we're looking at TTF, that's the Dutch gas. And we're also looking at the natural gas price in Asia and what the price of that has been. And of course, we look at German power here as well to kind of show you the relation between gas and power. Because currently we're still quite dependent on gas for our power generation as well. So not much to really explain in this graph. It's just to see that starting the summer already, the gas prices just really shot up. Compared to last year, it's almost like a 1200% increase, which is pretty nuts. Actually, it's not something that you usually see in a forward long-term market. These are kind of the trends that you see in really short-term intraday continuous market. So it's been a tumultuous time for the power companies as well, ups and downs. So just to give you an idea of what's happening.
And Trisha, maybe on this graph, if I may ask for clarification, you see a spike in the Asian spot energy, spike in TTF, so the Dutch gas price, spike in coal, spike in German electricity, but then you see Brent oil sort of increasing, but not spiking the same way. Can you explain why that is the case?
Yeah, I think that this one, the Brent is kind of a high liquidity kind of a situation, and there. So one of the reasons for the price increase also is to do with the volumes being traded. So the prices are really high, but the volumes are really low. If there was a lot of supply going around, I don't think we would have seen as much of a spike. Brent doesn't really have this going on for itself, so that's why we don't see the same type of price increase, is what I think. And just to kind of show why this is happening, we're also going to look a little bit of what the gas demand has been compared to that of 2019 levels and compared to that of 2020 levels. And with these two graphs on the left, what you're looking at is the region growth. This is just a graph from the IEA. So you can see compared to 2019, 2020, the overall demand for the world really dropped, and we all know why that is. That's because of the COVID-19 crisis. But then compared to 2019, 2021, also overall the world demand for gas has been pretty high, and especially compared to last year, it's really much higher, you know. And if you look at it per sector, what you see is that the biggest increase has been for industry since 2019 and 2020 levels. That's because we're ending lockdown and it's kind of a demand recovery situation. And that's also why you see it mostly in industry, but you also see it in buildings. And I'll explain in my next slide why that is. And you also see in the power industry as well how much gas is being used to generate power. So that being said, these are the main reasons why we have a price hike in gas. So the biggest one is the demand recovery. So we've, of course, just come out of a lockdown. Industries are starting to recover. People are starting to go back to offices. And so that is much greater demand than what we have seen in 2020. And it's also the biggest growth that we've seen in 25 years, as some say. So that's quite, yeah, as I'd like to avoid this word, but it is quite unprecedented, the demand hike. And if that was the only reason, we would have kind of been fine, but it's actually been coupled with all the other reasons below. So the next one is the extreme weather, and that's kind of going on already since last year. So I don't know if you can kind of remember, there was quite a cold winter spell in February and March. Spain had frozen roads, for example, and that kind of moved on next to a really hot summer. So there wasn't that much time to kind of replenish the gas storage. What you normally see in a regular year is you have a cold winter and then you have summertime when they fill in the storage with gas. And then you move on to the winter again when they have been replenished, and you know, it's a natural transition. But since we've had cold and then hot immediately, high air conditioning use, that's also kind of led to the gas storages not being filled. The third reason is the extreme weather has not just been Europe-wide. It's also been in Asia, it's been in South America, it's been in India, and they're all using gas as well to a high level. Asia has been paying extremely high prices for gas, which kind of elevates the price of gas in the European Union as well. So that's also coupled with it. And the record gas storage, I've already talked about it. The other reason is also that we've had a couple of outages of gas plants and also of interconnectors. So there was actually a fire at the interconnector between France and Great Britain. So that caused about a 2 gigawatt shortage. And plus there were some other outages as well. So of gas plants in various parts of the world. So that was another reason. And yeah, the last two are the low wind generation. It has been not a very windy autumn and windy summer. So that also led to a lot of gas. And as you remember in my previous graph, a lot of gas being used for power instead of the renewables, as you would expect. So that's the reason. And finally, the last one is just low nuclear availability. So a lot of the old plants are being decommissioned and just some unplanned outages there as well. So these are your biggest reasons for what, and all of this happening together simultaneously is the biggest reason why we are experiencing the situation that we are. And yeah, so that's all I have from, just one second, all I have from the reasons. And yeah, based on that, let's have a discussion.
Trisha, maybe one question I have on the reasons for this spike. We also saw on the graph you showed a spike in the price of coal. And we know that in Europe, we've been decommissioning coal plants. China has been lowering imports of coal from Australia. So do you think there's a reason or correlation between that decommissioning and the price spike now as well, or is that a different story?
It's a bit of a different story in the sense that, yeah, a lot of coal is being decommissioned, but the price of coal has been generally high because of the ETS and the carbon pricing. And the usage has been low till now. Now is the first time where we've kind of gone back in the last year. We've done a coal to gas switching again, and we're actually seeing more coal production actually in October right now than in gas, and kind of looking forward as well. So that is kind of a relation. So coal prices were already high, but they were not being used, but they're just going to be used now because gas prices are even higher.
All right, so it's less a reason, more an effect of the spike of coal prices.
Yeah, and I think that's not necessarily a problem that is in line with our targets. And the spike should have kind of led to coals not being used, but that's unfortunately not what's going to be happening in the short term.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a little bit more about what I think should be in the long term.
So you showed us this whole list indeed of reasons why this unprecedented event happened, or and this increase in prices now we're facing. Do we anticipate this to be just a one-off unlucky event right now, or should we expect higher energy prices and more volatility in the market in Europe going forward?
So in the short term, so let's say coming up to be 2022 till the Q2, yes, we are going to be seeing quite a bit of a price hike. We're going to be seeing more volatile situations in the market. And that's just because of all the situations that I described. In the long term, I don't see, I mean, if you're actually faced with a very cold winter, then it's going to persist even longer, because then we won't be able to fill our gas storage as much. But in the long term, I would hope not, because this is a clear result of our dependence on fossil fuels. There's a clear result of why so much of electricity is being produced from fossil fuels. If we had already decoupled those two factors, we would not have been facing it. So if you're on path with the energy transition, with the construction of more renewables, more storage solution, you would say we'll move away from it. But the question is a little bit of what we expect the short term to be. If there aren't enough investments made within the next 2-3 years, or an actual go live of projects, yeah, we could kind of be seeing this for the next 5 years, definitely.
So if we don't end up in that situation of this price volatility and spiking energy prices over the next couple of years, and we do, of course, want to decarbonize and go into this energy transition to meet our climate targets, what do you think we could do right now on the supply and the distribution side of the energy? So how do we secure this reliable, affordable power, but at the same time, move towards that energy transition? Are there any opportunities for doing this, Trisha, or is the only way to also still keep investing in gas?
No, definitely. I don't think the solution is to invest in more gas solutions. You actually see a lot of arguments in the news right now with we moved too fast with the transition. We should have actually relied more on our own gas, should have invested, just done the transition a bit slower. I don't think that's the message you want to take away from this. The message you want to take away is that, yeah, fossil fuels are subject to risks and weather risks, to political risks. So let's move to a risk-free solution. So I think for the different things that you could be doing for it is, of course, the usual one is just more renewables. Yeah, and that does take time. But if you were to invest in more gas right now, that would also take time. So let's move towards the path of green solution. Let's move a little bit more towards what can be solving the base load discussion, and solve that intermittent problem. What are the renewable solutions there? So that's actually something that is not really talked about a lot in these discussions, is geothermal energy. which is a 100% renewable solution to solving this storage problem. And where there is not that much of a technological challenge, you would say, because we already have a lot of experience with drilling with a lot of these oil and gas. So why not move more towards that? Of course, batteries are the obvious solution. I think about 1.3 gigawatts of batteries have been installed in the UK. In the next 4 years, there's planned to raise that up to 6 gigawatts and then up to 10 by 2030. So if we are on track with that, there's your solution with that, then we can kind of divide the peaks and the troughs of demand as well. Something that is not coming up so much in the discussions about the gas thing is the heating solution. Why are we not investing more in energy efficient solutions? About 7% of the households in Netherlands have poor insulation in their homes, which requires them to use a lot more energy that is required from a very well insulated home. So maybe the government funding should move more towards those kind of projects instead of subsidizing fossil fuels or helping these industries still make, produce electricity at a low price. Because again, high prices are not the problem. High prices are happening because they had been artificially low for so long.
So Trisha, you were mentioning a lot of opportunities, for accelerating the energy transition, as you say, and one is the energy efficiency, other is increasing the amount of renewable power generation. But then you talk indeed about the problem of intermittency of solar and wind. So can you explain a bit on what that problem is, and how feasible are the solutions you're mentioning, like batteries, at this point in time? Are these short-term solutions or are they long-term solutions?
I think one thing to kind of note here is we do have to think a bit of long-term solutions, because the short-term reaction to this is let's put a price cap on this and let's put the prices artificially low again. So we do have to think long-term. Sorry, what was the question again?
So the problem of intermittency of the solar and wind, can you explain what that problem actually is? Why is that a problem for the energy system, and is it already solvable right now, or are the techniques and like battery or maybe hydrogen, are those more longer term?
Yeah, exactly. So intermittency problem, that's the simple one, is when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow. So that's the basic part of it. But what that also means is there is a lot of disturbances in the frequency just because of the intermittency. So kind of let's say smoothen out the curve there, we do need batteries, and that you already see them being used by grid operators to kind of smoothen the load there, so that the grids can be safe from these kind of big changes. The other problems with using a lot of renewables is that we haven't had the proper distribution of renewables as much throughout the countries. Let's just take Germany as an example here, where you have more wind in the north and more solar in the south and demand in the south. So creating infrastructure and grid lines for easy transition from power from the north to the south, in this case, would be a solution to that. And these are projects that are already been worked on. I don't want to say that it has been really slow so far. This should have already been done 5 years ago. This is not a new problem. These risks were already there. When they were building so many solar panels in the Netherlands, Alliander did kind of already know that they had to do that, but they just didn't go ahead and do it. Because change is slow. And what's been working has been working, so it was never an issue. And now we can see that it's not working. So I would hope that this motivates people to accelerate these kind of investments more. Yes,
and so the call is clear, and I think this is a call that has been also in the debate, been part of the debate, also by Frans Timmermans, saying this: we should keep the momentum going, double down on the energy transition and renewables, not slow down. At the same time, we have an energy system that is still partly dependent on gas, and that's very clear. In the UK, 46% of the energy power production is related to gas. So in the Netherlands, it might be even higher at this point. So we're phasing that out over the years, but it's still we need some gas in the transition period. If what we're now seeing is that we're actually very dependent on foreign countries, foreign companies for production, for imports, and for storage. Do you think that's a given, and that we should purely focus on making renewables and all the other solutions accelerate those options? Or do you think we should at the same time parallel try to decrease our dependency by opening our own, reopening some of the gas storages of our own, maybe further gas exploration, or some other ways of making us less dependent on those foreign companies and countries for the gas system? What do you think there?
Yeah, that's a bit of a difficult question, I think. Yeah, because there are two parts of myself that are a part of this. I want to answer it from the market side point of view. You kind of want to say, yes, we should not be completely dependent on imports, because you're just kind of putting the problem in our country or in the EU to just outside sources. So the gas overall for the world is being produced. Why not invest in your own gas and, you know, make yourself more energy secure? The sustainability part of me wants to say no, because I kind of want to say that there are other solutions to this. For example, for heating, we know that heat pumps are a good way to solve that issue. At the moment, they're a lot more expensive to install for households than for them to just get a gas boiler. So maybe we need to think of ways to subsidize the greener solutions than subsidizing the heating for gas. Because I think there was a study recently done that it says that they still use a lot of those subsidies for heating for efficient gas heating solutions. So I think we have to kind of remove these kind of gray zones and move really more clearly towards black and white, or more like green and gray zones, green and black zones, sorry.
That's a clear call. Maybe also taking we see a lot of questions coming in the chat. Related to that cost element, I see a question from Andrea Palmer. Do you maybe want to ask the question yourself, Andrea?
Yeah, sure. So I work in real estate, and I see a lot of these large energy consumers buying under fixed contracts. So they're not really subject to these big volatilities because they've set a fixed price for a certain time period. So basically my question is, do you have a sense of how much of these increased costs will be bared by the utility companies in the case of a fixed price contract, or will be passed on to the consumer or of the energy themselves? Because if they can pass it on to the customers or the consumers, then basically their incentive to make these changes that Trisha mentions, I guess, reduces a little bit. So yeah, Trisha, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so sadly, a lot of these costs do go on to the consumers because they just kind of see it as a tax increase for themselves. What I think can be the solution here is to use the revenue that the government receives from auctioning carbon credits also, because let's say you have a fixed credit, you have a carbon credit, and you bought it at a certain time. And if that increases over time, where more and more companies do it, or more and more real estate agencies do it, the revenue for the government also increases to be able to distribute that over to the consumers. That's what I think can be one solution to it. Yeah, the cost to the producers, yeah, I guess it depends. It's because I'm not too sure about the fixed contract for the real estate agency, but what I do know for households, you have a retail provider and you have a supplier, and the retail provider offers a different price than what the supplier is producing. So they're already hedging for their risks over there. So maybe they need to kind of think of better strategies of hedging with that. But again, yeah, I guess I'm coming back to the question of are they going to the consumer? And I can't seem to think around any other answer than yes. So I think governments need to come up with better solutions of using the revenues that they get from all these green decarbonization solutions and spread it across the society a bit better. But it's not a very satisfactory answer, I agree. And these are just some hard questions to. I'm glad it's not my job a little bit. I have to.
I could imagine that some of these retailers that have agreed to long-term fixed prices, when their supply comes in at such a higher price, I mean, this actually could kill them quite quickly.
Yes, and that's something that you have seen in the UK, where you have 10 companies that have gone under. It's a tough one because you want to be able to help these companies. You don't want industries to drop down, but since we've waited for it so much and the shock effects are so big, there has not been, if you want to go towards a market, the market takes care of it all. So the winners will win and the losers will lose, but we can see that that's not a sustainable solution for anybody.
Yeah, and I guess this sort of puts, just a bit more stress on the system, and an already stressed system. If more and more players basically fall out of the system, this puts pricing power basically in the hands of the few remaining. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks.
And maybe on the market versus government approach, I see also a question here from Michael. Maybe you would like to comment on it yourself, Michael.
Yeah. I think it's a bit related to the previous point, where in general the approach has been, bring in some investments, some subsidies, but mostly letting market dynamics guide the way we do our energy transition. But we've kind of seen also with COVID and the lack of, hospital beds and intensive care in a kind of market-based healthcare sector, that a market approach doesn't really prepare for exceptional circumstances like this. So I guess my question is, do you think there's a link between this letting the market solve it approach and the current crisis? And also, would a more hands-on approach, have helped prevent this? And would there be a recommendation for a specific type of hands-on approach to prevent it from happening again?
I do think with the energy transition, market solves it all is not, it is one of the solutions to do it, but with a lot of help from government. For the long term, so one of the solutions, for example, if I can think about it, is there have been a lot of incentives for demand side saving and energy saving by a lot of the industries, but they haven't really been given enough financial incentives to solve that problem by themselves. If they've just looked at a cost benefit analysis and they've seen that to invest more in energy saving solutions, it's more costly for them to do that than to just keep doing what they've been doing for so long. So if there was more pressure or more support given to them, this could have been avoided, in the sense that our demand may not have been as exponentially rising with this recovery. It could have seen a more smoother rise. So that's one way where I think more incentives could help. I think, just kind of admitting that the markets work. The markets work as best as the market is designed, right? So I think there's a situation where we could have designed better carbon markets. Like, we waited till the last 3 years for carbon prices to really start shooting up. So before that, companies were given enough credits in advance, like by grandfathering, and they just did not have to act, let's say. So if the market has been designed to kind of push them more towards that solution, I think that would have also helped a bit. And and my personal view on this is markets are not the solution for everything. I know I work in energy markets, and but you need more government intervention, because when you need big change, you need bigger support.
And Trisha, now the estimate from Brussels was that the carbon emission permits under the emission trading system contributed to about 20% of the current price surge. And we see, of course, the price of carbon has gone up as well over the last couple of weeks and months. So do you think this is actually, the system is having the intended effect now? Is that what we're seeing on making fossil fuels less attractive? Or, you know, is it putting an increased volatility into the market? Do we need to reevaluate the system for reliability and affordability reasons?
I mean, one could also argue that the prices are not high enough because if they were high enough, they would have already switched from using coal completely. So what we are seeing now is what you wanted to see. It's kind of not a carbon tax, but if the prices are high enough, you would kind of hope that it just moves the investments away from it. And I think they are high enough to not encourage more investments in that area, but they're not been enough to move away from it completely. So I would say, yeah, 20% is nothing. We just saw that the prices have risen by 1,200% since last year. So if only 20% is coming from the ETS, I would say it's not even working as well as it should. As we see now, you know, we're going back to coal because it's still cheaper to use coal.
So can I summarize this as we didn't raise the prices enough before? So it would have been fine to get to this point with the ETS prices and the expenses that are additionally added for non-renewable sources. Because we were too slow, we're now paying the price. Because instead of happening over 3 years, it's happening in 3 months.
Yeah.
So maybe another, to put another thing in the mix of maybe more government-led approach in this energy transition, something that was on the slide of reasons, so less nuclear power supply. So the reasons that we have this spike now. Of course, you could argue, you know, should this be part of the energy transition or not? It is by definition at this point part of our energy system. But at the same time, we're seeing that governments are for instance, the German economy is backing down of nuclear. It used to be about 30% of its electricity generation coming from nuclear. Now that figure is about 12%, and it's ultimately headed to zero, making the economy of Germany effectively more dependent on other sources, other renewables, but also more dependent at the moment on coal and natural gas. So do you think as nuclear, it's not a completely clean energy source, but at least it is not emitting the CO2s? Should it be a more strong part in the transition towards renewables, that nuclear power, as it is reliable as a source? Or do you think, again, that this will actually, if we double down further on nuclear, that will slow down the transition towards renewables, and that's not something we need or want, Trisha?
That's a good question, the last part especially. Yeah, I think if we are looking at the solution with only the carbon dioxide emissions, nuclear is part of the solution because it's by definition carbon free. But if we wanted to look at long-term effects on people, nuclear has shown historically that it can be quite a risky source because just the regulations with safety and thinking of future generations, it's not sufficient. Let's say we solve that problem and we put very stringent guidelines on what nuclear should look like. You could say that we should invest in it. Technologically, we've kind of improved on nuclear technology. We're not still looking at the power plants from the 70s. We're 50 years later. We know more about it, how it works. So I think it can be part of the solution more than carbon capture is, which is the other solution that's discussed. So can we invest in both? I think so. I think it is worth looking at nuclear as a solution because it solves the baseload problem completely. But maybe we also need to look at things like geothermal, which also would do the same without harming future generations. I'm not sure if I answered your question completely.
No, I think it does. So putting it into perspective. Another question that I actually had was, and I think you've commented a bit on it already, but I want to deep dive a bit more on it, is in the debate, you know, right now you see governments are intervening. handing out cash in France or putting a cap on energy prices right now. And some say, for instance, Consolación de Miera, director of climate change alliances, Iberdrola, the Spanish multinational electricity company, she says this will effectively only create confusion in the market, or it will lower potential investments in renewables. So that's not the way to go about. However, we see on the other hand, citizens being at great risk of energy poverty, and businesses need to stop their production because energy prices are just too high. So should we let the market react to this price signal and you let the market be the market? Or should we indeed subsidize right now and cap prices of energy to protect businesses and protect citizens in the short term? Or are there other opportunities of incentives we could deploy on the short and medium term? What do you think there, Trisha?
I think we should look at other incentives that don't give money to fossil fuel industries. If we are subsidizing the industry, we're making it cheaper, the price, and then the benefit goes towards the producers. I think we need to look at benefits for the consumer, so more of a social protection kind of solution. For dealing with low-income households, I think we should help them actively give money to invest in more insulation solutions, because that would already solve a big chunk of the problem there. With businesses, I think we can help them buy the energy at a cheaper price, or subsidize them to just be able to kind of like a handover money to them, I guess. Don't know the economic term for it. But yeah, so they can buy it. But I think from the producing side, the prices should be what they are, because that represents the true cost of fossil fuels right now. I think there have been quite a lot of talk about investing in a recovery fund. There's been about just cash handouts to people in France, which is, I think, 100 euros extra per month, which I think is not enough, because study shows that for the Dutch consumers, the price of electricity is expected to rise up to 600 euros per month more. So you would say taking that to France is not enough. So, but solutions in that area is better. I think this also has sent a clear signal that we should invest in more renewable energy. So use the money there instead of putting it back to the fossil fuel industry. I think with the amount of subsidies that are produced, that are given to energy providers, still about 70% of it goes to the fossil fuel industry. So they're already subsidized. We don't need to subsidize them more. That's my opinion. But I don't have all the solutions for how you can help consumers, but I don't think subsidies is the way to do it.
Okay. And then we, of course, are right before the COP26 right now. And this is a very interesting, I think, context that has played out over the last weeks, just before the COP26. Of course, the risk that you hear is that this might be an argument, a big argument for the whole fossil fuel industry to say, hey, we need more investment and potentially lower ambitions in the COP26. While the one doesn't maybe have to lead to the other, but what would we feel as a group, and you, Trisha, but everyone else also pitch in, what would be a good outcome of COP26 and what would be a bad outcome?
I think a bad outcome would be if we come back with saying, okay, we need to just slow the transition and move the target to 2070 instead of 2030, 2050. That would be the worst argument. I think the best would be if we actually come up with more innovative policy solutions. So I've mentioned geothermal a couple of times. It's not really part of the political consideration at all. And the reason for that is there is quite a heavy opposition for it from countries, because it requires them to invest in a completely innovative solution, which is not that innovative actually, because as I mentioned, it's we've had experience with drilling, but you can kind of see that if the oil and gas producers are incentivized to move towards geothermal drilling solutions, because they already have the know-how. That could be a very good outcome of it if we come up with more concrete plans. Investing more in heating solutions, I think the debate has been really about coal. You know, the transition is all about coal, but it's much more than coal. It's our heating, it's our homes, it's energy efficiency. So kind of coming up with clear targets with that would also be a good outcome, because we need to think bigger than just CO2 price. I think also incentivizing more, we haven't really talked about it today, but just more demand response solution, making that process easier for big industrial consumers such as steel, cement. How can they participate with grid operators to provide ancillary services? So for example, to match the imbalance in the system by reducing their consumption. So if they are given enough money to shut down or reduce consumption at a certain point of the day, they can do so, but they should have the reason to do so. So things like that, I think, would be innovative than just saying that we have a 2030 target.
And Andrea Palmer, a question from your side, I see popping in.
Yeah, I have another question, and this one is, Trisha, the extent to that you see off-grid energy generation being a solution here, because actually I haven't really heard much about that one recently. So, but from a resiliency perspective, I guess it makes sense. But how much opportunity is there really there for this?
Yeah, decentralized solutions, I guess, is the question. Yeah, I have a hard time answering this question because this is not my field of expertise as much, because it's kind of decoupled from the energy market in a way. But you would say, if done in neighborhoods and communities in an active way, and it does make communities energy secure and energy independent. So I can kind of see the argument to be made there. But yeah, I don't know that much about this one. Maybe Yella, you know a little bit about this, because I feel like we were talking about it a little bit the other day.
Well, yeah, I think it's with all across the board, the whole spectrum of solutions we have provided. I think it's all a matter of looking at local conditions in terms of policies, of technical feasibility, because one neighborhood that's new build might be an opportunity to still make an off-grid network, while and investments that already are in place are a bit harder to open the ground to retrofit everything. So it's a feasibility as well, and then of course a financeability. All of these solutions cost money, so per I think local region, you should look at what's the most feasible and financial viable opportunities. I think off-grid solutions can in some places play a role, but definitely not everywhere. So there's a local by local opportunity. And maybe this counts. Yeah, go ahead, Trisha.
No, and I feel like what we have done a lot is we've talked about solutions, but we haven't really talked about initiatives that are being taken by the government as well. I mean, it's not like they're not doing anything either. So they have kind of, with off-grid coupled with energy storage and energy insulation, I think is something that the government has a lot of different programs to invest in. And there are a couple of neighborhoods in the Netherlands, I think, where they are checking to see if this is a viable solution or not. I think the point to be made out of this whole discussion is, yes, we just got to do it fast. We just can't take our sweet time anymore.
No, I agree, and something we've not talked about that much as well. But I think in the longer term, of course, the intermittency problem, part of that can be combated with the production of national produced hydrogen from solar and wind. And of course, this needs to be produced, but then also stored, and it needs to be transported. So it needs a lot of infrastructure behind, and infrastructure investments behind this change. But I do think some of these solutions, like hydrogen, they will only come in play in the more longer term, so 2026, 2027 onwards. I think the coming years will be a challenge. At the same time, we know we need to accelerate, and we need to, in this COP26, the good outcome will be acceleration across the spectrum of opportunities, of incentives, of policies, of ambition levels. And at the shorter term, though, there will be volatility and there will be, pain in terms of players in the UK going out of business and price spikes. And I think it's very important for the European Union, indeed, the most vulnerable citizens, to protect them from these energy spikes, and think of ways also to simultaneously we're ramping up the energy transition, but also to think of the necessary infrastructure investments to be made to balance our electricity system, and in other ways make our efficiency, the energy system, higher, so that we decrease our dependency on gas and on coal. That's, I think, the ultimate goal of the energy transition.
And I think I've mentioned it before as well, like from an infrastructure point of view, just in the amount of high voltage grids that are being used for interconnecting countries, to make sure that the power moves. So from, let's say, Norway, which has a lot of hydro production, to move that to the Netherlands, there is a lot of steps being taken in that direction already. I think it's quite commendable that in the last 2 years and the next 2 years, we have built about 4 interconnectors, each of like roughly 1 gigawatt to 2 gigawatts, which is a lot, has been already built. So there is speed and acceleration in that side already, because it's profitable as well. So that's a bit of the game here.
Yes, and at the same time, of course, there will be, hopefully a very quickly decreasing share of gas we need, just to keep everything, to keep power going. But for that part that we still need in the transition, we need to think of ways to secure that we have that in storage, and that we have long-term contracts on prices, and that we make ourselves a bit less dependent on these market forces, so that, yes, prices go up, and yes, this drives the energy transition, but it doesn't come in an overnight spike, which puts businesses in an immediate problem and consumers in an immediate problem, because this, I think, is not most economically, but also socially best outcome. But
yeah, indeed, what we did see a little bit is if the traders had bought gas a bit earlier in the year, yes, we would have seen high prices, but we wouldn't have seen a 1,200% increase in the prices. So yeah, another way where, market has its drawbacks as well.
Okay, so future-looking solutions for making us less prone to these shocks for gas, but especially accelerating our dependency on gas and coal and fossil fuels as a whole should be our stake at the game for COP26. Clear, Trisha, thank you very much for everything you've shared with us and all the knowledge you have on this topic. Is really privileged that we could have you today in the session. Everybody that joined the call, thank you very much for your questions and your participation. If you're not yet a member of Net Impact, but you like these kinds of sessions, then please become a member, and we'll hope to see you soon at our next event. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Trisha, and thanks, Jelle. This was a really, really fascinating session, so much appreciated, especially this was a sort of last-minute session, given the time sensitivity around this, so thanks very much for jumping in to share this. We're having a borrel next on November the 18th, so yeah, feel free to join. You can find it on our website, but yeah, that's it for now. Good weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.